Hey everybody, what is up? I suppose Les already covered the Super Bowl, and I don't really have anything to add to it. It played out exactly as we said, and how everybody said for, I don't know, the 2.5 weeks before the game. So really, there's not a lot to say about it. I don't really have many thoughts that Les hasn't already said, but where I do have some thoughts are in the realm of college basketball, which it's almost March now, things are starting to get real. So we're going to talk a little bit in a minute. I'm going to go through a couple lists of 5 different things to tell what teams I like, what teams I don't like, what teams I'm like expecting to do, unexpected things in March going forward. But to start, we had that Juwan Howard and Greg Gard incident yesterday in what was just a shocking kind of moment for college basketball. There's not a lot to say about it that probably can't be said by someone more intelligent than I. But the bottom line is, Juwan Howard needs to be suspended for the rest of the season. Do I think he needs to be fired? Absolutely not. Why would he get fired? Because this is a repeat offense. Last year with Mark Turgeon at Maryland during that timeout, he got into it with him and almost instigated something then. What I'm saying is there needs to be repercussions, and a lot of repercussions. But firing is probably where the line should be drawn. I don't think he deserves to lose his job. And we'll get into Michigan a little bit later for another reason. But that's my thoughts on that. Very brief, very much, it's unnecessary to put yourself in that situation. I understand that Greg Gard isn't a saint here either. No one comes out good looking from this, and the only people who are going to suffer are the kids because I bet a couple Michigan guys are going to get suspended for the rest of the year as well, and I think that someone else is going to get taken out too by this, and it's going to be a real awful way to end what was already sort of a disappointing season for the Wolverines. But those are my thoughts on that. So without further ado, heading into March, I'm going to go through a couple lists of 5 here. I'm going to start with 5 teams who are big names who I like to win going forward. My first one being Auburn. Les and I didn't talk much about Auburn, but one of us, I think it was me, actually took Jabari Smith during the draft we did at the start of the season, and we're seeing why now. This team is playing at an exceptional level, and I know they're coming off a loss to Florida, but I like them going forward, especially with a higher seed to their advantage. We've seen Bruce Pearl take a less talented team to the Final Four, and this team with Walker Kessler and Jabari and so many of these guys who are just underrated are going to go pretty far. Next up, in a move that will both surprise and elate my co-host, I'm actually going to pick Duke. And if you follow Les on Twitter, you know you've seen more than a few meltdowns regarding Duke's woes to close out basketball games. But here's the thing. I don't mind that as much because what that does, they've won when they've been in a tight situation most of the time. And if you can win in tight situations now, it'll help you going forward into March. Because, remember the Zion Williamson team from a few years ago we all loved, and they did go far. I don't remember them being super tested so many times like this Duke team has. And I think that showed, especially in that second game versus Central Florida, they almost lost with Zion Williamson, that was kind of a stepping stone, a challenge for them in the tournament, and you don't really want to experience that in the tournament, like a gut check moment in the second round. And I think the Duke's kind of inability, and I say that loosely, to just blow out a team may play into their favor going forward because they've learned how to do things in clutch situations and come out on top most of the time. So that's why I like Duke, and I know Les probably has a rebuttal for this that's long and boring, but we're going to forget that for now. Coming up next, UK, a team that the University of Kentucky. I mean, another team that Les and I really didn't talk much about. We were higher on Alabama preseason, but let's be honest, they're just playing out of their minds right now. They beat a very good Alabama team without a point guard, or any guard, essentially. They've got a Player of the Year, probable top 3, if not the winner at Oscar. And I mean, it's hard to bet against a team like that, especially since the SEC is very difficult. They've played a tough schedule as well outside of that, and the way they just absolutely decimated Kansas during the Big 12 SEC Challenge proves to me that this team, as a 2 seed especially, is ready to take on just about anybody heading into March. This is a very good team We weren't sure how the transfers were going to work. Kellen Grady looks good. And they don't even have the sharp kid anymore, but I don't even think they need him because that's just how good they are. So Kentucky definitely is a team I'm going to be a little bit higher on than normal going into March. This one might surprise you, but I'm going with another reason for this. And I really like Texas Tech. I like their defense. I like the way they scrap for every ball. I mean, Texas Tech is going to be a very tough out for any ball club going forward into March Madness. And they have some veteran qualities. They've got some transfer guys. I just really like them for some reason. And even though I have not seen them play that often, I have a tendency to believe in like narratives and just overall like I guess momentum. And Texas Tech is on an upswing right now, in spite of the fact they lost Chris Beard. And I think that's going to continue going forward. And finally, for my 5 to win it, this team doesn't surprise me at all. Gonzaga. They're kind of flying under the radar right now, but they still have Holmgren. They still have the point guard whose name is escaping me right now, who may be even better than Jalen Suggs was last year. And they still have a very nice veteran in Drew Timme. And it's hard for me to go against a team like that, especially going forward. Like I said, they're going to have a favorable draw. They're probably going to be out west. And when you have 3 guys like that who are just ready to go at any time, who have been tested by the West Coast Athletic Conference West Coast Conference, because St. Mary's is still, as they perennially are, stuck in the bottom half of the top 20, which is still pretty good. But Gonzaga, just a good, complete ball club. So top 5 to win who are major powers. I like Auburn, I like Duke, I like UK, Texas Tech, and Gonzaga. But if you're not into that, 2 kind of outsider teams who I'm very interested on to see what they will do going forward would be Alabama. I know they just got blown out by Kentucky, but they still have a lot of quad 1 wins. And after that skid midway through the season, they look really good now, and I think they're going to make some noise. And this is the homer in me talking. I know no one believes in them because of the schedule they played, but I still think I like Providence simply because I like Al Durham. And I'm happy to see Al Durham is playing out of his mind for this Providence team in the Big East. So I like Alabama and Providence. That may be fool's gold, but they're just 2 outside teams that it's hard for me not to love. And now we're going to move on to the sad side of the bracket with my top 5 disappointments on the year. And I'm going to start with a team that really shouldn't be here, but they're disappointing to me in another way. And I'm going to start with Baylor. Les and I did not talk much about the defending national champions. We knew they had Matthew Mayer. I took him in our draft, and I still don't regret that decision because he's amazing. But why? And they're in the top 10, so why is Baylor in my disappointment list? They're disappointing to me because I'm just wondering what could have been. This team has been rattled with injuries all year long. They're still doing very well in spite of that. They're still probably going to make a decent run, but I'm just going to wonder how good they might be if everyone's healthy and good to go. So that's the only reason Baylor's on this list, because I just wonder what might have been, how good they could be if they were healthy. Moving on now to number 4, Oregon, who I watched get beaten for the second time this year by Arizona State. I thought this team was good enough to contend and maybe even win the Pac-12. They were kind of my upset pick. But something just isn't meshing there with Oregon, and I hate to see it because I really like the Ducks going into the season, but they're on the bubble and they're probably not going to get in. So Oregon, number 4 on this list. Number 3, and they could easily be number 1, Memphis, with the Penny Hardaway situation, with the way they've just absolutely kind of collapsed in on themselves. This was a team that had Imani Bates, who Les and I were very high on. They had Quijones, who Les and I were very high on. And now they've got basically nothing. They're on the bubble. They got blown out by SMU yesterday. And another guy, Kendrick Davis, who I'm very high on. So this season all around has just been very disappointing for Memphis. But probably not as disappointing as my number 2 team here, Michigan. Les and I were very high on Michigan. There were many of us who thought, I think they were 7th in the preseason poll, who thought that Hunter Dickinson, Diabate, and all those guys were going to come through with Juwan Howard, who is already like a shooting star coach, and come out of nowhere and just challenge Purdue for the Big Ten title. That just has not materialized. Those early season struggles continued, and it's just a real shame because they have a lot of talent on that team. They've beaten a lot of very good teams, but they just can't seemingly get over that hump. And now with this fight against Wisconsin, in a game they were already down by 19 in, it's just not a good look. And I hate to say that for Michigan going forward, but it's not happening. And finally, number 1, North Carolina. Like I said, this list is pretty much interchangeable, except for Baylor, who needs to be in a different category. But we were talking about this. Les took Armando Bacot, who I also really wanted to take in our player draft. They got Brady Manick. They got a new coach, but Roy Williams is still behind the bench every game, shadow coaching. I really thought North Carolina in a weak ACC could be a really good contender, but it's just not happening. And they may not have many bad losses. I mean, Georgia Tech really isn't as bad on paper as you think it is. They don't have any great wins that have really taken my breath away. And even though they're playing their way onto the bubble right now because of the weak bubble field, it feels like North Carolina's season's been a little bit of a disappointment because we saw what Duke did to them. And it just didn't feel like a competition on that game. So my top 5 disappointments, really 4 plus 1. UNC, Michigan, Memphis, and Oregon, with Baylor as a great what-if question because of their injury problems. And now, because I love this part, we're going to move into the top 5 teams to watch. And I'm going to start with a team that I think a lot of people from our area know fairly well, and that's the Iona Gales with Rick Pitino. Don't forget that these guys beat Alabama early in the season when Alabama was highly ranked and regarded. They're really good in the MAAC, or the MAC, as I like to call it. And they have a very good guy named Tyson Jolly with 15 points a game almost. That's going to be a team that if you're in the lower part of the bracket, you do not want to face. So that's one of the teams I would watch. If you pop up in your bracket, maybe pencil them as an upset special. Next up, Chattanooga out of the Southern Conference. I really like their offense. They're on a bit of a losing streak. They've lost 2 in a row, most recently a 5-point game to VMI. But Chattanooga plays a very intense offense. They shoot a lot of threes. They score a lot of points. I would be very wary of seeing Chattanooga pop up in my bracket going forward. Then, of course, Davidson. I know they're in the Atlantic 10 now, and they're really more popular than they are. But if they get in there, that's another team with a high-powered offense that's going to make a lot of noise, and it's going to make a big difference. St. Bonaventure, though, a team I was very high on, I'm going to mention them here, got off to a little bit of a slow start, have since rebounded. If they find their way in, that's a crushing defense. Umanori is still playing out of his mind. O.C. Umanori. He's a great perimeter defender at 6'7". That's another team to watch. The Atlantic 10 has 2 in Davidson and St. Bonaventure, who are very good and very eager. I would watch them. Moving on now to Colorado State. They still have David Liddy. They're still very good in that conference. I think that team is more likely to be a 7 seed than like a 12 seed. So if you see Colorado State pop up in your bracket and they're up against a mid-tier ACC, mid-tier SEC, take Colorado State. I really like Colorado State going forward. And finally, because they're kind of a local team, I love these guys a lot. I love the Murray State Racers. I think that, remember when John Morant was there? I think this team may be even better than when John Morant was there. The last time they lost was to Auburn. Yeah, they haven't lost this year. They're led by KJ Williams. That guy's got almost 19 points a game. They're the 19th leading scoring team in the country. They are very good, and I think they have played a couple teams. I talked about Belmont. Belmont, year in and year out, is one of those teams that's always on the bubble. We know Dick Vitale loved them. And they have beaten them twice. Murray State has. Murray State is 26-2. I know their schedule kind of makes you go, eh. But I really like them. They're a good rebounding team. They're in the top 50 with that. They've got a guy with 18 points a game. I really like the way Murray State is playing right now. And Murray State would definitely be my number 1 mid-major pick to pull some upsets in your bracket. So to refresh with that one, top 5 teams from non-power conferences I think could make a big move. Davidson, St. Bonaventure tied for the A-10, Colorado State, Iona, Chattanooga, and Murray State. So hopefully if we ever get the chance to do a full episode again about basketball, we'll dive a little bit further into that, and I'm sure we'll do something when the brackets come out, who we like, who we don't like, who got a bad draw. But that is my college basketball report heading into the month of March. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we'll see you again real soon.